Hi, I'm Teacher Steve, and welcome to Beyond English, Unlocking the Power of Language. And today we're going to be looking at what is figurative language. Let's get into it. Similes, metaphors, personification, alliteration, hyperbole, idioms, and onomatopoeia. What are these things? Well, they're not the sort of things we talk about every day. However, they are an important part of our lives and they play a bigger part than you think. Let's have a look and see what each of these things are. They are all part of what's called figurative language. She's as pretty as a sunset. He smelt like a rubbish tip. So these sentences use figurative language to make words more descriptive and meaningful. They paint pictures in our minds so they have a greater impact. Okay, let's explore the wonderful world of figurative language and answer the following questions. What is figurative language? How do we use it? Why do we use it? And what are some of the common types of figurative language we use each day? So, what is figurative language? Well, figurative language is just a fancy way of saying we use words in creative ways. We use our imagination when we're speaking and writing. We describe things in more interesting and imaginative ways so that what we say has a greater impact. Instead of saying it's freezing outside, we might say it's colder than the South Pole outside, because this paints a stronger picture in our mind and in the mind of the listener or the audience, and it emphasizes that it's very, very cold outside. Why do we use figurative language? Well, it makes our writing and speaking more colorful and more memorable. And that's an important thing. People are more likely to remember something that you've said using figurative language than they are if you just use literal language. It helps our audience imagine what we're saying, and it also allows us to express our emotions and our ideas in more powerful ways. Another aspect of figurative language is that it adds humor and emphasis to statements and ideas. When you add humor or emphasis, people are more likely to remember them. It was like watching grass grow. This is a more interesting and creative way of saying it was really boring. How was the movie you saw last night, teacher? It was like watching grass grow. That sort of recommendation is not going to encourage somebody else to watch it, right? So, why do we use figurative language? Because what we say and what we write has a greater impact on the hearer or the audience. How do we use figurative language? Well, we use it in stories, poems, songs, and even in everyday conversation. So the reality is we use figurative language everywhere in all aspects of our communication. It makes what we say and what we write, our communication, much more interesting, much more fun, and much more memorable. Writers use it to create vivid images, while speakers use it to connect with their audience. We encounter it every day without even realizing it in conversations, songs, books, movies, advertising, and especially in social media. Okay, similes compare two unlike things using the words like or as. They make the descriptions more vivid by comparing two unlike things using the words like or as. So, her smile was as bright as the sun. So, there's nothing, smile and sun have nothing in common. They are not alike. However, we use the sun here to paint a picture of how bright her smile was. The clouds drifted across the sky like cotton candy. Clouds and cotton candy have nothing in common. However, if you use the simile, the clouds drifted across the sky like cotton candy, we paint a picture of what the clouds looked like as they drifted across the sky. Now, metaphors are like similes, but they don't use like or as. A metaphor says that one thing is another, and it makes a strong connection by saying that this thing is not like the other thing, but it is the other thing. So, he is a thorn in my side is an example of a metaphor. This metaphor means that someone is a constant source of irritation, annoyance, and trouble, just like if you had a thorn in your side. My little brother keeps taking my things without asking. He's such a thorn in my side. Paints a picture of how irritating, annoying, and troublesome your little brother is by constantly taking your toys without asking. Idioms are phrases that don't mean literally what they say, which means idioms don't mean what they mean. Idioms mean something different to what they mean, if that makes sense. So the sentence, it's a piece of cake, means something is very easy. The exam was a piece of cake. How did you go on the exam? It was a piece of cake. Means that it's very easy. It's raining cats and dogs. Means it's raining a lot. Drive carefully. It's raining cats and dogs. Be careful when you go outside. It's raining cats and dogs. It's not raining cats and dogs, but it is raining very heavy. The exam isn't a piece of cake, but it is very easy. So, in each of these cases, the words mean something different to what they literally mean, but the listener or the hearer understands what you're saying because they have an accepted meaning within the culture. So, idioms are phrases that don't mean literally what they say, but they do have a meaning that people understand when you use them. Personification gives human qualities to non human things. The wind whispered through the trees. The haunted house was calling to me, come and see, come and see. Now, in both cases, we know that the wind cannot whisper and the haunted house cannot call. These are examples of personification. We're attributing the human quality of being able to speak to the wind and to the house. Now, we know that that's not true, but it paints a picture in the eye of the reader or the listener that the author or speaker wants to convey. And if you have a look, personification. Person is the first part of the word, so it's easy to remember. Personification is attributing people qualities to non people things. Alliteration happens when two or more words grouped together share the same initial sound. Several snakes slithered silently across the grass. So in this phrase, the strongest alliteration comes from S at the start of the words. Several snakes slithered silently. However, the S sounds in across the grass at the end of the sentence, they also create an extended effect, adding to the overall sense of rhythm and flow. So while alliteration is the initial sounds, there can be words in a sentence or a phrase that add to the alliteration effect because they have the same sound either at the end or in the middle of the word. Now, alliteration is used effectively in a lot of things, including movie titles and character names. The Fantastic Four, Rise of the Silver Surfer. It's an effective use of alliteration. In names, Peter Pan and Mad Max, Clark Kent and Lois Lane in the Superman series, Mickey Mouse and Minnie Mouse in Disney. Now, this use of alliteration is not an accident, right? The people that use it understand how effective it is, and so it's used with a lot of thought and a great effect. Hyperbole. Don't call it hyperbole, as some of my students do. Hyperbole is a fancy word for exaggeration or more to the point over exaggeration. Because the bigger the exaggeration, the better the hyperbole. Hyperbole is all about taking things to the extreme to make a point. It was so hot, the sun was fanning itself. It was so cold, even the polar bears were wearing coats. I was so hungry I could have eaten a mountain of pizza. So in each of these cases, it's an over exaggeration to paint a picture, an extreme picture of how you were feeling in that situation or in those circumstances. So hyperbole is the use of exaggeration. The bigger the exaggeration, the more effective the hyperbole. Onomatopoeia is where words imitate the sounds of objects, actions, or animals that they describe, making the reader hear what is happening in the text. So, onomatopoeia is used in literature, poetry, and in everyday speech to create a vivid sensory experience. In poetry, the bees buzzed in the blooming garden as the stream splashed over the rocks. So, buzzed and splashed are an example of onomatopoeia where we can hear the bees buzzing and hear the stream splashing. In comics and graphic novels, words like pow and zap are used to represent actions in scenes, to give the reader the feeling of the impact and the sounds that are happening. In everyday speech, we use it. I can hear the bacon sizzling in the pan. I can hear the bacon. Hear the bacon what? The bacon can't talk, it can't scream, it can't yell, but it can sizzle. So that idea of sizzling, when someone hears that bacon sizzling in the pan, it reminds them of the sound, so they hear it actually happening. So onomatopoeia is where we use words to imitate the sounds of objects, actions, or animals that they're describing, helping the reader have a more vivid sensory experience. Okay, let's recap. See if you learn anything or remember anything. What is a simile? Simile compares two unlike things using like or as. He smelt like a rubbish tip. What's a metaphor? A metaphor is where you say something is something else. So it takes two unlike things and says one is the other. He is a thorn in my side. What's personification? Remember person. So personification is where we attribute human qualities to non-human things. The rain danced on the rooftop. Dancing, which is a human quality, to rain, which is a non-human thing. It's an idiom. An idiom is where the words don't mean what they mean. The exam was a piece of cake. We know what it means. The exam was really easy, but it's not literally a piece of cake. What's alliteration? Well, alliteration is where we use the same sound at the start of two or more words to create an effect. Several snakes slithering. Hyperbole, hyperbole, hyperbole. It's over exaggeration. Remember, the bigger the exaggeration, the better the hyperbole. I'm so starving I could eat a horse. Onomatopoeia. That's where we use words so that we hear the animal or the thing, the noise that it's making. Bees buzzed, stream splashed. So, what's next? Well, what's next is to practice, practice, practice. Practice like your life depended on it. Learning figurative language is adding pictures, sounds, and colors to your words. It's adding to your impact as a speaker, as a writer, and as a communicator. And it will add to your confidence when it comes to speaking in front of people, or even just adding to conversations in groups and to writing effective poetry, narratives, and even informative texts. So work on using figurative language in everything that you do, in all your writing and in all your conversations. Okay, that's it. That's our video on figurative language. I hope you learned something. Thanks for watching, and if you like the content, leave a comment. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. I'm Teacher Steve from Beyond English, Unpacking the Power of Language. Wherever you are in the world, I wish you a wonderful day. See you later. Chat soon.